Support for this show is brought to you by novel Till the Bitter Endemic. What if there was a happy ending to a pandemic? Perhaps an unexpected love story. After Daisy gets thrust into mandatory quarantine for an infection she can't explain, it's up to her to unravel the truth as to what's behind it and what she can ultimately do to escape it. But she can't do this alone, and that's where she finds not only herself, but a very special person that opens their heart for the betterment of their survival. Find out how in Till the Bitter Endemic. Available now on Amazon in all major formats.
Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to After Hours, where, guys, you don't gotta go home, so grab a chair, grab a drink, and let's dish.
But you do need to be 21 and older.
Yeah, yes. Well, it could be the drink could be non-alcoholic,
I
technically.
guess. Where's the fun in that?
Joining us, as you already heard, is Mr. Philip with 1L Church from philipchurch.com.
You guys know who it is. Hello. You're smart. You know this voice.
Today, I want to talk about the audience because as we've grown, so has our audience. And as our audience has grown, so has their feedback. And in the last year, I have had such a fascinating experience dealing with said feedback because, like any artist or any creative trying to break into this industry, we get, of course, the full gambit of feedback. So we get the very positive, love your show, love what you're doing, it's very specific on a topic. We got a great review on our In Defense of Zenyatta Mandata by the Police. Thank you for that. We get a lot in the middle, and then of course we get the other end, the one that artists love to hate, and that is the sharp, scathing criticism, dear God, to the point where I can see why people, here today, gone today, Philip, it can be so scathing, so sharp, so hard that people take it personally. And I do my best.
Like the plague.
Yeah, I do my best to not take it personally. I try to look at our journey as, there's a lot of W's and L's, and instead of wins and losses, there's wins and learning opportunities. That's my dad wisdom of the month kind of line. Now, as I was studying not only our feedback and how our audience is growing and thinking about the concept of how the audience and different mediums have changed, an epiphany occurred to me. And I realized, especially with the commentary that is YouTube and Twitter and Reddit, I realized that the audience is now our critics. And because of that, there is a duality of not only role, but job. And to make matters more fascinating, this is a relatively new phenomenon, I would say, in the last 20 years, obviously, since about 2004, since social media was born and we got things, Facebook first got the wall, right? And you could comment on almost anything. And that grew into YouTube comments, Reddit culture. I mean, use your imagination. Like the roots where the seed was dropped and the roots took hold. And now it's this ever-changing set of vines and trees. And now we have the force that is comment culture. And I found it so fascinating that it has become just that, a culture, that the audience has a whole new identity because they can literally critique anything at any given time, and not only critique the thing, but also critique each other or have conversations that make the criticism either better or arguably could regress into oblivion. So today, I want to begin by furthering the conversation with reading some of our own comments that I thought was kind of a perfect microcosm of this larger culture at hand. So without further ado, let me pull this up. So just to give you, I feel like I'm setting up a trailer. Just to set it up, we did
In
a
a
show.
world.
In a world. So me and Philip, so this is perfect because Philip's doing the
Philip
discussion
and
on the show.
I.
Philip and I did a show on the Smashing Pumpkins, and we narrowed our theses to the 1990 to the year 2000. So we focused on their career from that, and we put the show out into the world. And I started probably in the last quarter of 2024. I started making trailers for the shows, just to give people a little more of a nibble to see what they're getting into, and if they want to take the full bite, they can, and they can click on the full show. That's approximately like an hour, where we discuss their history and their legacy and their influence and why they're so important and so great in the music world and the art community. For this trailer, this is where you probably remember this, Philip. We were talking about that, like kind of close to the end of that era, end of that decade, where they were starting to be commissioned for a number of projects, and one of the big one was Batman and Robin. And I talked about loving those like standalone singles for that, and I was kind of gushing about the tracks. And what I did was, when me and Philip, we talk so fast, and we were a lot of stream of consciousness stuff. What I did was I not mispronounced the title of the of the track, but I missed some of the wording. So the actual track, or one of them, there's two, but the one I was talking about, or I think one of the ones I was talking about, is "The beginning is the end is the beginning." And I think I said, instead of an "is," I think I said an "of." Like, I think I said "the beginning of the end is the beginning," something like that, right? But it's such a long title. I mean, obviously, I think everyone knew what I was talking about, but someone, of course, had to criticize the fact that I didn't say it perfectly. And this is what they said. This is okay. So here is the actual shade. At Enough said, "You love those tracks, but got the titles wrong." And then someone, a complete stranger, commented on that comment. At Yura Tarkov just said he didn't. And then At Enough said he definitely did. And then Euro Tarkov, of course, had to argue with him and say he may have added an extra word to it, but he didn't get the titles completely off. And then Enough said ended the conversation, or maybe the other guy just didn't want to reply because he knew where this was going. But At Enough said he didn't add an extra word. He replaced it entirely for both songs, thus changing the meaning of their titles. So the beauty of this, I think, why I said this was a microcosm for the larger culture at hand, is, so I got some criticism. And technically he was right. I did mess up the title, right? But I think in our defense, it's such a long title, like you knew what we were talking about, right? But he was right. I will give him that. He was right. I messed up the title. But the other guy, what the beauty of it is, the other guy defended us because of what I just said. Like, I was like, well, I think they got the point. The point was delivered.
Yeah, you knew what he was talking about.
You knew what he was talking about, but it didn't. And then again, the beauty of this culture is then they get an argument with each other, and though it doesn't spiral out of control, though it doesn't spiral out of control, this it ends with a few more lines after this. Doesn't this perfectly encapsulate this culture that is comment culture, Reddit culture, YouTube comment section, whatever you want to call it?
It pretty much highlights the fact that while society at large has just been a gigantic shouting match, for the most part anyways, that all the internet has done is distill that like a science. And it's so funny how I've had these same moments where I'll be watching some kind of video, and the person who, like, there's pressure on you. You're performing to an extent. You never know what kind of deadline someone's against. And just little small things are so normal. Everybody screws up talking every day. And so even I've had this moments where I'm just like, haha, like he said it wrong. But it's so funny how that really becomes some kind of weird gotcha that's like a win for people. And whereas overall it's like, how important is this to you, man? Like, it was one small like conjunctive word or whatever, like not even like a massive verb or like the noun or like the main character or anything. It's just a small word and a title where they knew what you were talking about. And yeah, I mean, it was not, I appreciate that, even though with you sitting here admitting, like, okay, I did say it wrong. I love the fact that the desire for argument seems to be so healthy and widespread that someone jumped in to defend us despite being technically in the wrong. It's so funny how that is exactly that. Like, if you want to do it in sort of more layman's terms, nutshell, otherwise microcosm of just the like modern commenter / critic situation at large. That's the most encapsulated you could probably find it.
But what's crazy is like, even, for like Gen Z, or I guess for Gen Alpha for sure, to a lesser extent Gen Z, they've only known this, right? For older generations like us Zennials, Millennials,
I'm old as hell.
and us geriatric millennials, as we like to tease ourselves. We had half of our life in analog, where there was no opportunity to have this interaction with the artists or the product or the final vision of said medium. How we used to do it, Philip, or our parents before us, is we would tell the artist or the musician or the act or whatever with our wallets, right? With our pocketbooks. If we didn't like the thing, we wouldn't go to the thing. If we didn't like the thing, we wouldn't buy the ticket. But now, since again, it's so fascinating because living in that time for so long, and now, so half our life is being in analog and the other half being in digital, and seeing that change, it's kind of flabbergasting that there is this power, this like power dynamic on one hand with the audience, but also this identity, this culture, because we had actual sanctioned critics, right? We had like Siskel and Ebert and the New York Times, and
you were a known name to matter,
right?
Like you had to have made headlines by that point for your word to mean anything,
right?
Not just some at username 59833 says you suck.
No, yeah, but that's the beauty of it, right? Is like there is power in numbers, and remember the guy that criticizes first, it was at enough said, which is, I think, just perfect. Enough said. I am the final word. That is the internet. But again, when that paradigm shifted, okay, so speed up to today's standards and culture identity, when people started to consistently do this and have relationships with not only the artists, because there, guys, you probably could think of an example in your head right now where the artist got so upset over, something someone said on Twitter that they themselves interacted with that critic, that it turned into its own publicity stunt, even though it was like accidental. Some are clearly on purpose, but a lot of them aren't meant to be. We live in this strange time, Philip, where the small amount of criticism, though, we actually do read every single email and comment and you name it, I will almost always personally read it. So guys, one, I'm a glutton for misery. So when you when you're sending the scathing remarks about our show and how awful we are and how much we suck, that does get internalized, and we are trying to constantly do better. So we are hearing you, we are listening, and we want to do better. And for all those people that are somewhere in the middle, we hear you too. And obviously on the people on the other end that's giving a lot of praise and positive remarks, those are going into the pile as well. But I think, so that's just us, we're just using us. But when we actually see the bridge of how much this can change things, so that it's very case by case, it's circumstantial. The biggest thing that I can think of in the last year or two is enough people criticized. Remember the very first model for Sonic the Hedgehog, like the animated films, and the first model was like, monstrous, like too human. It
Nightmare
wasn't
fuel.
Yeah, it wasn't cartoonish enough, and the entire community, like, collectively, the internet had an uproar, and the filmmakers did change it, and to great acclaim and to great commercial success, that those movies are have made a killing in the box office, and now they're on their third or fourth one with Shadow. I think Keanu Reeves is voicing it now.
That is true. Idris Elba is still in there.
That is a perfect example of like this power dynamic that the audience has as critics does change things, and sometimes for the better, but it can also change things for the very, very worse. And that's where we're kind of getting into some of the pros and cons of this territory.
Well, I mean,
we did that. Philip's catchphrase. Well,
I've thought about that a little bit since you said it. I was like, he's right, son of a.
Well,
yeah, it's when I'm trying to avoid just being mean. I never mean to be mean necessarily.
We like to tease. We've when
it's playful.
Our first season we were mere babies. Second season we were children. Third season we were teenagers, and now I feel like we're finally coming into our adulthood, and we like to tease. We like to poke and prod the audience a little bit, and we have discovered that they are a little sensitive. So I'm ready to, now that they are actually saying stuff and interacting with us, it's time to evolve and make a new relationship with the audience. But first, I do want to hear. You don't have to be mean per se, but I do want to hear that. I want to hear that deep cut, feelings.
So I guess pros would be the fact that the feedback cycle has never been like quicker to deliver any kind of result, and it's never been easier to get feedback. Just given you don't even have to do it like a paid study anymore. In the way that there's so much money thrown in marketing, you want to know what people think? Post to YouTube. Just post something on the internet, and the
internet will tell you.
Come out of the woodwork to just be like, your technique is garbage. Maybe you should go back. And other people will be like, wow, this just
kill
saved
yourself
my life.
too.
Yeah, exactly. You get both ends of the spectrum. You'll get everything from like, you should kill yourself to, you just saved me from killing myself, to like
this is the
hey,
most
this is awesome. Yeah,
ever.
and then you'll get the really good stuff too, where like genuine people will just say like, oh, this is really cool, or this really inspired me, and like some people will reach out, and you never know who's going to forge like a cool new connection, whether it's personal, professional, etc. So in that way, I guess I would consider that a pro. The con is the fact that like the feedback loop itself has kind of created like this. I'm gonna go ahead and just get a little nasty for just a minute here. This culture of reaction content drives me insane. No one gives a crap what every single person has to react to everything. And the fact that there are like reactions to reaction videos now is just the most stupid idiocracy timeline bullcrap we can do. That part makes me sad. It's all part of the same thing. And so I unfortunately think the cons are greater. But if you want quick feedback, then there's a wonderful pro for you. But yeah, I think giving every single person a voice just kind of goes to show the reason why it just didn't used to be this way.
I am so glad you said that, because that was going to be...
It didn't used to be this way.
That was what I wanted to transition to bridge to, is the idea of, the Pandora's box is open. The genie is out of the bottle. And that I don't think we will ever go back. We will always everyone will have the opportunity to have a say on literally everything. And I always thought, I get it in the beginning. I think a lot of the things that Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Reddit, I think they all had good intentions at the beginning, like the like button. No one in a million years probably thought that would lead to like epidemic levels of depression and sadness and loneliness, and people, driving people closer to their phones and away from other actual humans. That creates that loop of more depression and sadness and etc. They just like, wow, I just wanted to have the opportunity to like this thing, right? And that made me think of, when I was thinking of the bigger picture of this conversation, did we really need to give this to the audience? And I've been toying with going back and forth with the pendulum that is the idea of yes and no with that kind of a question. And I tend to lean towards I don't know if we should have. I don't know. I kind of think the best way to tell an artist if you like his thing is to buy the ticket, and the best way to tell the artist they don't like the thing is to not buy the ticket, or whatever the thing is, right? You buy the album or you don't buy the album. You go to the show or you don't go to the show. On and on from there, right? And then there's a part of me that's like, do we need to, not go to the show but also then tell the artist that they're a piece of shit? like
right.
Do we need
it's
to
one
do
thing
both?
Yeah, it's one thing to detract from their literal bottom line, like their baseline. It's one thing to be like, you know what, I won't contribute to them paying their bills and putting food on their plates, but then to go out of your way to be like, you dumb dickhead, and like, come on, man, what are you putting out there? You're gonna get back what you put out there. Like that should kind of be the case, and it often is. So
but that's what's crazy is that it is a pendulum, because then I think, because I'll start to veer towards that in my mind, but then the pendulum will swing the other way, and I'm like, well, but at the same time, we wouldn't have that feedback. We wouldn't have that. We wouldn't have Sonic fixed, essentially. Like, we would have had the bad Sonic in the theaters.
Well, yeah, there's definitely it's not like nothing good has ever come of it, but it is just wild how if you did a ratio of like,
it's a double-edged sword.
The times there's been an actual common good compared to just like, God, the times where it is really just everybody just screaming like various F words, just as loud as they can for just no other reason that they can, is just like, come on, grow up. It is funny though. It's so meta that, but like this, just having something like, like Rangers fan 53 something, and just a picture of a cartoon. And of course you're going to feel tough. Of course you're going to get out there and criticize the hell out of everybody. So the good news is, I think when other people that aren't on the content level, like content creator level, like just, they will stick up for people that they believe in, which is nice, because it's kind of like, cool, you feel like criticizing them, I'm going to criticize your criticizing. Yeah. And that there's just this ridiculous, stupid meta layer that, like I said, it's all part of the pendulum, because that swings back the other way again, where it's like, if you're going to put yourself on the line by making your dumb, useless criticism, like there's nothing constructive to it, if it's just rude and talentless, then like it was pointless. And so the fact that other people will jump up and go, hey, guess what, I love that. I love that, at least. Shining a light on humanity's various parts.
Are you saying like when they get into an argument with each other?
Yeah.
When, like someone is throwing like extreme shade, like just like scathing criticism, and then someone else comes in that's a complete stranger that is like,
dog in this fight, and they're just
RoboCop fan 283 says,
right?
Like, no, that's great. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like, where's your podcast, dingbat? Like, why don't you do better? Just call them out of just like, oh yeah, your opinion was uninformed as hell, my man. Like, you were wrong about points A, B, and C, so why don't you sit down and shut up? It's amazing the levels to which people care about being able to correct other people and be that critic, to where they jump at it and then they get a taste of their own medicine. And I do wonder if that ever really like sits with people a certain way. But it is funny that there's even that meta layer to it, where even the criticism gets criticism, and especially if it's poorly done. So there is that sort of funny level that almost takes part of it back into pro, but as you said, it's just back and forth.
There is a little balance, but I do think because of that power, it's right. I think it still tends to shift towards more of the darker side, because there is a human nature to criticism. Like, there is a scientific, psychological reason that, when something, really bad happens, we want to voice our opinion. We want to, I think which market got it really first, and when I think about it, it's probably the dining industry, like Yelp, where like if one thing or a few things didn't go to plan, or it wasn't to the expectations didn't meet the reality, that stranger will get on the internet, give it 1 star, this was the worst steakhouse I've ever been to, and just destroy them on the internet, and
go out of their way, lie, probably,
right. And then they may have just like, to any other person, it may be a 9 out of 10. Maybe the steak was medium instead of medium rare.
It's literally just, like, y'all ran out of breadsticks, you greedy.
Right. But there is a reason that people, like, when things go perfectly to plan, they're like, oh, well, that's how it should have been. I don't need to give a positive review of that.
And
But
when
when
the
some things
squeaky wheel
don't go to
gets
plan,
the grease, and you're just raging.
right, when things don't go to plan, people feel obligated to voice the extreme negative side of that impact.
It's funny too. Like even that's just like it's so black and white on that. It's so just all or nothing. Where it's either like a 5-star or a 1-star. You won't see people post a genuine 3-star and give an actual explanation where you're like, yeah, that's a 3-star. It's either like 5 stars where it just sounds like a normal meal, and they don't gush about how it was perfect and give it 5 stars, or it's like a 1-star and you're like, no, this still sounds like a normal meal. Where was the 1-star? It's so weird, even in that, where people like have to hit that extreme, because it's still, and maybe this is coming in part of what you're talking about, it's still just, it's everybody wanting attention. And it's the fact that some people are more bold than others and will go and create content. And then some people just want to speak up and be loud.
It's more than attention, though. There's usually
sometimes it's just attention.
Yeah, sometimes yes, it absolutely is just, and that's why we have a name for them. Those are trolls, right? That's why the birth of the troll is because of the birth of the internet, and more particularly the birth of the comment section. I also want to say something. So there is science here, and there is psychology here, and I do want to bridge to. I think it's a controversial sociological study, and I think it's often people will criticize the study itself, but I do find it fascinating. I'll talk about it a little bit because of what will be revealed in a moment. So, a set of very smart sociologists wanted to try to quantify, not give qualitative nature to the concept that is communication, human-to-human communication, and they realize that there's a lot of things to communication. There is, when you're talking to someone, there's not only the words that come out of your mouth, but there's also cadence, rhythm, tone, but also communication is facial expression and how people move with their hands. And the point is that there's a multitude of things that create communication from human to human. Now, what is the obvious is lacking when we're only communicating through text on a screen, right? And these same sociologists tried to quantify something like that. In their study, they said that the literal words we speak, like how much, like the words I'm saying to you right now, because since you can't, we don't, this is not a video podcast, so you can't, Philip can't see me, I can't see him. So
I can
the
see
little
you.
words, oh God, it's getting creepy again. So the actual words I'm saying right now, Philip, if you had to give a number to the idea that is communication, what number do you, like a percentage, what do you think the literal words coming out of my mouth right now would be associated with? Just guessing.
At least 50, because there's text being the main, a lot of the other one, like, sure, there's that. And then of course there's always like visual art, graphic art, blah, blah, blah. But I would say, as far as, are we talking a ratio of how much it matters, or like a percentage of what it encompasses?
Right. The second one.
My bad. Okay.
When you add up, facial expression versus rhythm of the vocal, tone of the vocal, every tiny little thing that is communication when you're in front of someone, which is how we've been communicating for millennia,
Right.
versus just the literal words that are coming out of my mouth right now. What is the percentage of the words coming out of my mouth right now?
60%.
60%. It is
like a trick question.
Again, this is controversial, so I'm not saying this is hard. This is what it is, forever and always. But in this study, they said that it's only 7%.
Off.
Yes, 7, and depending, there's also other peer reviewed studies, so it's like 7 to 9 depending on the study, but it's less than 10. So when you think about it that way, what is text on a screen? It's just the words. It's the literal words that are coming out of your mouth for communication.
But without tone and pace and...
Right.
Yeah.
So I liken that to less than 7% of what the person's actually trying to communicate. When you think about it that way, you're like, wow, this is why we have such a, there can be such toxic communities online because all they're communicating through is just text on a screen. And because they're only getting less than 7% of the actual, what they actually want to communicate, of course there's going to be a breakdown of communication. So, I mean, like, you're missing upwards to 90% of what you're trying to convey. And that's why, like, I think the easiest one is like humor. How many times, like, I know that I am definitely guilty of this, where I've tried to like text someone a joke and it does not land.
Does not land.
Right? Because they don't know, they're not hearing the tone, they're not hearing the pause where the punchline should be. They're just reading the joke flat, right? So, and that before I pass it back to you, that actually brings me to relating. So, if you guys have heard our show before, and I hope that you have, and I hope that you continue to do, is when we talk about gyms and stuff like that, I talk about how much I love stand-up comedy. I support stand-up comedies. I think it is it's absolutely its own art form, being a stand-up comic and comedy in and of itself. And I think stand-up comedy, though, is a very unique form of that medium. And it being an art, when you hear a comedian talk about comment culture or Reddit culture or YouTube comment section culture, they often, it was the very first time I was like, man, I finally can relate to them, because for years I had always heard them be like them criticize this culture and the fact that it has skewed their industry so much that they won't even do shows in colleges anymore, because they're going to get that kind of, either feedback, or everyone is so sensitive, or everyone has to be in a safe space, or anything like that. And I'm not saying all of those cultures come from, Reddit culture, comment culture, things like that. There's a lot of other issues with younger generations, but the point is that, like, I finally could understand them, because I was like, man, I'm getting some scathing criticism for, we're not stand-up comics. There's humor in our show, but at least I can relate to how they've been feeling for so long.
Pretty much everything lives in a commentable format now. It is so standardized. It really just took off the moment that aspect of leave a comment, for all we know, it was kind of MySpace-ish or Facebook first. And it's everywhere. Literally every single thing does allow everybody to say whatever they think about any given thing, to the point where that also, from my own art perspective, the couple of times where I've gone out there to sort of, update a website, look for the nice reviews, or just kind of look for a new average of my metrics or stats or whatever. You just kind of say like, oh, I've sold this many, blah, blah, blah. It does tend to end up I'm lucky in that, I guess, like, I don't see tons of rude or mean stuff, but it still is horrifying.
Oh, really?
I mean, again, I wasn't looking for it. I mean, obviously I'm not going to show everybody on my website any of my worst reviews, but, I still saw some of the, like, people, narrator was okay. It's like, okay, well, it's better than horrible, right? And like, I've never seen someone just straight up pick me out of the whole book and just be like, oh, the material itself was great, but the narrator was Like, luckily, that's never happened to me that I know of. I haven't seen it if it is. And I don't love it. As I've made clear both before this episode and today, those things terrify me. I wouldn't want to be that way. And it really does make me yearn for a time that I didn't even get to experience, where if I was putting audiobooks out into the world, unless my agent or like a newspaper or somebody wanted to know, all I'd have to do is just not open up. And that's just stuff like audiobooks. I mean, if you're talking like actual big time actors or other people, like, it used to be that much smaller of a scope as it was. Now, even if you're somebody like me, that I do not make my living off of audiobooks. I wish I did, and I'm always going to gear towards being like full voiceover narration, just like all that stuff. But I do have a day job, and as a result, like, luckily, it doesn't. I don't have to get mired in those things. And that would be horrifying for me if I had to be surrounded by that like all the time. And so luckily, again, I'm a nobody. I'm not a like big award winning, like been in the industry for 30 years, like some of these people whose names you kind of, at least in this
You
side of the
will
industry,
eventually, though. So
yeah, well,
time to grow a thick
exactly,
skin now.
give enough time, and I'll be in those shoes. But it's only been about 11
Grow a
years for
thick
me.
skin now.
I'm trying, man. But
Yeah.
the tears keep coming. But
Add enough
that
said
aspect,
is helping us.
of being able to just literally keep your head in the sand and avoid it is
Yeah.
such an interesting time gone by. To where, you really just, you used to be able to, it didn't have to matter at all. You could so easily avoid it. And then again, the fact that you can comment on everything from all the way up to our president is a doofus to this guy in this YouTube video is a it's just, it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone's free range now too. That's the other weird thing, to where you kind of used to have to be like kind of the same way that the critics were somebody where you had to matter to be like, oh, my opinion is worth listening to. You used to be like, have to be making like, oh, this guy is an actor. Like he's making thousands, if not millions a year. Like blah, blah, blah. He'd better be better than this. But it's like, no, you could just be some dude in your basement who just enjoys like, I just like to upload my paintings every now and again. And someone's going to be like, this guy's a and it's just so weird.
This is the worst painting I've ever seen.
It's so weird how we'll just tear somebody down for no reason. But it's wild out there, and how this really is just the norm. And that, like, I mean, the kind of goes back to one of my previous points too, where ever since the shortening of the feedback cycle got that much like quicker, but also the scope of it got insanely wider, to where, once again, if you were a comedian in 2000, you just had to give a crap about, what the executives at Comedy Central said, and maybe some of the newspaper reviewers. There was maybe 10 people you gave a shit about impressing. And now you can have 2,000 detractors, hopefully a lot more good ones too. And then hoping that somewhere in there, maybe somebody matters and will also reach out and be like, okay, this person's worth a shot. Because it's interesting, even the bad stuff, you generated conversation and comments, and engagement is another form of that economy. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that, oh, I don't give a crap how many thumbs down. That's a click. I don't care how many bad comments. That's a comment left. It's almost sometimes not worth looking at it as a good comment, bad comment, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's all engagement. It's all metrics, and that's all money to people. So it's funny how even framing it as whether it's good or bad, at some point that stops mattering too, and it just really comes down to dollars, because that will always be a big aspect, at least on the business end of it. Not for you and me. We're not sitting here raking in dollars. That's not what's important to us. We're doing this because it's fun, because we enjoy it. If money comes, sweet, cut me a check, Novo, when that happens. But right now, this is for the love of the game. And so it's interesting that even when somebody has seemingly no skin in the game, again, my livelihood is not going to be ruined if a bunch of people pile on this episode the day after it releases and are just like,
oh, and they will.
That Philip, oh man, this episode really rankled my tankles. Like,
but it's still important, I think that's a good segue to the future. I don't think
everything is a segue to the future.
That is true.
Damn, 2025.
Damn, you get killing it over here with the segues. Philip Segway Church. That's what we call him back in college. But this is never going to be reversed, I think, is
there's no going back.
Yeah, there's no going back. And so the hardest challenge is to try to read and collect all these points as almost data points to see what, because I do want to listen to the audience, and I want to have a relationship with the audience, and I want to grow with the audience. And there's really no other way to, there's still going to be the people that are going to write in, like old, before email, it was an actual letter that, some fan would actually write to the fan base or the fan club, I guess at the time. And there will still people that will do that. But the easiest way, of course, is to leave the comment in the comment section, or, to tweet about it or what have you. And then the dog piling can occur, maybe not occur, depending on the source of the material or the medium or the art involved. But as we move forward, it's like you said, we're not going back. So I do want to try to evolve with it. And I'm really excited to see where things go, because for all the people, so for all you good people listening and that have been enjoying the show and have been growing with us as we grow, especially for the very positive feedback leavers. I want to say thank you for all the people in the middle. I want to say thank you, but even for the sharp criticism, you may be surprised to hear that I want to say thank you, because it all goes into making us better, because I have had such a pleasure of getting to know the audience a little more over the year. Sometimes if it's a friend of a friend of a friend, I get to meet a few of these people that are enjoying the show. And so far, I am learning that we are cultivating just the best and like smartest group of fans a show could ever have. And so I want to say thank you. And guys, we love you.
We would be nothing without our actual audience.
Amen. With that being said, I do think it's probably time to close shop here at After Hours, because I am gonna get a little emotional, and I don't want you to. It's like Philip, do you hear it? Like closing time.
I was thinking "My Way" by Sinatra. Okay, whatever.
Oh, that is still good though. I like that. Ooh. But I always think of that '90s song. Is '90s?
Oh yeah.
Aughts.
Oh,
something.
90s.
Closing
90s.
time.
Yeah.
Because guys, when you hear closing time, you know what that means. That means that it's that time. So we don't gotta go home, but we all gotta get out of here. But until then, you know what to do. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, good luck and Godspeed. We love you guys. Take care.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created by Novo Day and Theodore T. Buckingham. Written, directed, produced, and edited by Novo Day and the NDP Collective. Starring Philip Church of philipchurch.com. That's Philip with one L. Alexandra Parsons of alexandraparsons.com. ALEXANDRA-PARSONS.com. With special contributions by Theodore T. Buckingham. Music by A Company, Instagram handle A_CO_music_. Logo design by Tom Justice of thejusticecompany.com, JESTUS. Thank you again for listening. All rights reserved. Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is our go-to tool for remote podcast recordings. What's great is that you can record separate audio and video tracks, and it's all backed up on a secured cloud, so you never lose your hard work. Even better, it's easy to use, and there's nothing to download. So go to Zencastr.com, Zencastr.com, and use promo code Art of the Beholder to get 30% off your first 3 months with a pro account. This show is supported by philipchurch.com. Need a professional voice for your project? Whether it's a commercial, podcast, audiobook, or other, I deliver high-quality voiceover and narration services that match your vision. And with fast turnarounds, crisp audio, and a range of tones and styles to suit your needs, isn't it time to bring your story or brand to life? So let's get going. Visit philipchurch.com, that's Philip with one L, to find demos, samples, and contact information. And with this voice, let's make that next project unforgettable.